Hey everybody, welcome back to the greenhouse at One Seed, One World. Hey, if you get a chance, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Today we're going to do a little bit of transplanting of some of these seedlings that have come up. I want to get going on some of the cucumbers and thinning out some of the tomatoes. I think one thing that I need to really learn to do is, or make sure that I start doing is maybe not planting so many seeds per pot. I always like plant extra in case I don't get, enough germination, and make sure all my pots have something in them. But in some cases, I've got 3 or 4 plants going on in one pot, and it can make it difficult to have to separate all that, and I might be causing myself some unnecessary work. Because really, again, it's going to depend on the seed company that you go with, and what kind of luck that you have had with their germination rates and how well they do. I get pretty much everything that I plant from Baker Creek, and their germination rates consistently every year are right near 100%. I mean, I might have a couple of seeds here and there that don't come up, but I'm finding that with them, I don't need to plant extras to make sure that I'm getting, stuff. Because even sometimes older plants, where I've had the seeds for 2 or 3 years, I still get really good germination rates as long as they're, stored properly. So in a lot of these, I just have too many per pot, and I need to. I'll probably some of the smaller ones I'll cut out and get rid of, but a lot of these I need to separate and put into new pots so they've got enough room to grow for the next couple weeks before I get them outside. I am going to plant some of the cucumbers outside today, though. I'm about a week and a half early for my last frost date, but there's no frost in the 2-week forecast, so I'm hoping that it stays that way. And that'll open up a little bit more room in here. I mean, just a little bit. I'm only putting a few plants outside, but I figure if we do get a frost, or if I lose some, I've got plenty to go around. So if I can, I'll put, while I have the chance, I'm gonna put some out there. So when you're doing your transplanting, you want to wait until you've got at least 2 true leaves. Generally, when the seeds first sprout, they're going to be really tiny and have probably like 2 little leaves on them that are called, starts with a C, cotyledons, I don't know, but it's something like that. And that is just the plant getting, putting those first 2 leaves out to start being able to work with the photosynthesis process. Here's an example of one here. So you see this little tiny guy here. This was a late sprouter, and he doesn't have any true leaves yet. Really, these are just starting their true leaves. These are very small pots, or I mean small plants. Whereas with some of these other ones, now you see here, now they're getting their true leaves, and these all have at least 2 true leaves on there. Some of them are sprouting some new ones. So that's what you're looking for before you do any transplanting. Now for my tomatoes, I'm not putting any of them in the ground yet. These plants are still kind of small. They would probably do okay, but I want to give them some more time in the greenhouse. Plus some of these I'm hoping to sell the seedlings, and I want to get a bigger plant and kind of get them separated into their own pots so they got more room to grow. So let's get going with the transplant. You're just going to dig out your hole a little bit deeper. I've got the plants separated, then the dirt that you got for them. But with cucumbers, you don't need to bury the stem in the soil like you would with tomatoes, and we'll go over that in a minute. But just want to get all the dirt covered in there. And I'm planting mine up against this cattle panel trellis so that as they grow, they can then start climbing on up. And I'm putting these about a foot apart. I just kind of use my little shovel here as or my trowel as a little measure. So then I'll dig my next hole down here. And this is just a few plants that are going in today. So now with this one here, see I got one little tiny one and then one good sized one. So I'm only going to plant the bigger one out here in the ground, and then I'll repot this one and keep this one in the greenhouse so it can have some better growing time. So I just added some dirt back in there, put it back in there with its roots, and we'll let that one grow a little bit longer in the greenhouse. So once you get your cucumbers in, you're going to want to give them some water. Not too much though, you don't want to saturate them. Cucumbers don't like wet feet. And so make sure that you're planting them in a well-drained area as well. And then they'll probably also experience some transplant shock. Most plants will go through that, which basically means they will kind of, they need to recover from being separated and put in the ground and all that, and to their new environment. And depending on the plant, they might not grow for a little bit. They might look a little wilty, but they should bounce back within a day or so. I would say that the one exception that at least that I run into is with loofahs. Loofah does not transplant well in my experience. If you start it in a pot and then take it outside and transplant it, it can take up to a month to recover and will look like it's gonna die at any minute. I've transplanted them a couple of times in the past, and you really lose a lot of good growing time because it has a long recovery time once it's been transplanted. So some plants do better direct seeded into the ground instead of transplanting, but most of your other stuff like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, you can even do squash, and some lettuces. They can all be started in pots to give yourself a head start and then transplanted outside. Generally, you would not do that with your root vegetables though, but any of those other types of general green growing plants, they normally survive pretty well. So hopefully I don't have any rabbits come take my cucumbers though. Got some rain a couple different days this week, so I now have the chance to use my water catchment barrel to fill my watering cans. So, it's just gravity fed, so it runs a little bit slower than getting it out of the hose, but I like being able to recycle the water and then put it on the areas where I want it to go. So your tomatoes now, the transplant's going to work a little bit different than the cucumbers. I got a couple of empties here because I'm just going to separate these out, and I'm putting a little bit of the garden soil dirt in the bottom of the tray. Maybe filling it like, I don't know, quarter of the way up, maybe a little bit more, third of the way up. And it's going to kind of work the same way to begin with, where you're just going to take your plant out, or plants, and get these separated. Trying to be gentle with the roots as much as possible. I had them planted a little too close together, the seeds in the pot, so the roots got a little entwined. So we'll come back to this one in a minute, but when you're planting tomatoes, the plants all along the edge here, hopefully that comes up on the camera, but you can kind of see the little fuzzy things on there. Those all can become roots. And so when you plant or transplant them, or even when you're planting them out in the garden, even if you've got bigger ones, you can sink the tomato down farther into the ground, and then those will get roots on them. So you'll bury it in the ground. Got a little bit too much dirt on this poor guy. But sink it farther down the ground and or into your pot, so that it's got dirt right up just below the bottom of the leaves there. And what that will do is allow it to grow more roots out of the base, and it will give it a stronger stem start. The stems will get thicker to start off, and you'll get a more sturdy plant. So just tuck that down in there. Add a little bit more dirt here around the edges. And then you've got your plant transplanted. Now he has his own pot, his own little home. So it would be preferable if I had planted these a little farther apart, like put the seeds a little farther apart when I planted them initially, to give me a little bit more of a block of dirt to work with instead of this kind of bare root, but this will still be okay. It will give your plant now more room to grow in their own pots for the next couple of weeks until we get to the point where we can then transplant them one more time out into the garden. So what if you don't want to transplant? What if you've got so many that you just want to thin them out and you don't want to necessarily transplant them into new pots? What I find the best thing to do when you are just thinning is take the plant that you don't want and just pinch it off with your fingers, kind of right down by the dirt. Like that. Pinch that off, and then that last little bit of root will just die off and compost down in there. But what that does, especially if you only have 2 plants in a pot and you just want to get rid of one of them, if you pinch it off, actually I'm going to do that with this just to show you. Pinch that off, the 2 that I didn't want, kept the strongest, largest plant in there. And what that does is you're not disturbing the soil at all. If you're trying to pull it out, you could, and if the roots were entangled, you might, do a little damage to the plant that you want to keep. So if you just pinch it off at the top, there's no damage done to the root base, and now he has his own little home that he can grow in by himself and continue to get bigger. So I have a lot of transplanting to do today, but I just wanted to give you some little tips on thinning and transplanting. One last point would be that when you are doing your transplanting, try to pick a time of the day or a day when it's not too hot out, because the plant's are already going to go through some shock to begin with for the transplanting that they'll have to recover from, and then if you add the additional extreme heat, then they got to try to deal with that as well as get their roots reestablished and whatnot. So if it's a hot day, try to transplant early in the morning or in the evening after the heat kind of abates a bit. Or I've got a day today that's just in the 70s. It's cloudy as we've had some rain showers today. So I'm not dealing with any extreme heats that they will have to recover from. So one other thing that I'm excited about too, just one last thing, is that I had planted a bunch of flowers this past week. Most of them were zinnias, but I also did a couple of other types of plants like hyssop and yarrow that gets flowers on them as well as the various colored zinnia. I got purple, red, pink, yellow, and I think there's also one called Persian carpet that is like a yellow brown kind of mix. It looks kind of amazing. So, but I'm excited because even though it's only been 4 or 5 days since I planted these, the zinnia have all started to sprout, and one of my yarrow has already started to sprout. The only one that I'm really concerned about is the candy tuft, because those seeds I think are at least 3 years old. So I don't know how the germination rates will have dropped on those and how they'll do. But we'll see if they come up. I also have some celosia, and coxcomb seeds that I planted. So we'll see what they all do. Definitely started them much later than anything else. I probably should have planted them the same time I did everything else, but it is what it is. I'm just happy that they're sprouting now. So that's it for transplanting. Hope those couple of tips helped you, and if you have any questions or comments below, or if you have additional advice for me on even better ways of transplanting, please let me know. Put some comments below. But we hope to see you again soon. And I hope that whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, your gardens and homesteads, whatever it is that you're doing, I hope that it is all coming out successful for you. And I hope that you have a fantastic day. See you again soon. Namaste.